38 short Colt versus 380 ACP. I'm doing this test because a lot of people have asked me to do that. They wanted to see 380 ACP compared to 38 short Colt, and I can kind of see why, because you know the cartridges are of similar size, and you know the 38 short Colt is actually closer in size to a 9mm, but being that this is such an old cartridge, I believe it's the first centerfire cartridge ever created, if not one of the first. And you know, it's a very low powered cartridge. So what I'm going to do today is something a little different than what I normally do. I'm going to try to do something that's not fair in a lot of respects. I'm using a quite a bit smaller 380 ACP pistol versus a larger revolver to see what kind of performance I get, because I had some people wanting to see what a 38 short Colt would do in this 4-inch barrel here, because in a 2-inch barrel we were getting in the 600s for velocity. I'm not sure if we'll get a velocity increase in this 4-inch barrel, but it's a possibility because there's a little more barrel, but it's not a particularly powerful cartridge. So I'm going to compare our Remington short Colt 125 grain lead rated at 730 feet per second to the 380 ACP 95 grain. I got some Aguila here, and this is rated at 730. I don't know what this is rated at, but I'm going to use my 4-inch barrel Smith & Wesson 686 to test that. And that makes a lot of sense because, you know, when the cartridge was first invented, you know, this would be kind of a short barrel at the time. So we should get okay velocity in that. There will be some free bore in here though, because that cartridge is going to jump from, you know, back here into a little bit larger than the bullet diameter. I'm not sure how that's going to affect that. And with the 380 ACP, Smith & Wesson Shield Easy with the 3.68-inch barrel, and that's a pretty good pistol for getting good velocity at 380 ACP as well. So we are going to go through the chronograph, see what kind of velocity and accuracy we get at the same time. Then I'm going to do my 10% clear ballistic test. I'm going to go into plain clear ballistics to see what the best potential is of those cartridges are. And then after that, I'm going to do more of our real world simulation where I have 4 layers of denim on the first 3-inch piece here that represents our pectoral muscle. After that, I'll have a 1/4-inch medium density fiberboard that represents ribs or sternum. That's more of our real world simulation. I know that denim's kind of redundant, but when we're talking about these low powered cartridges, low velocity, that could potentially change how they perform. So we'll see how they do with that. And then I'm going to shoot up my steel. I'm going to go up close and see what kind of shootability I can get comparing these two, because we all know 380 ACP shoots really easy. I want to see how easy that 38 short Colt is to shoot out of a revolver that's that big. And then I think I'll back it up a little bit too and see what kind of longer range abilities they have for fun. So let's get started with this test. All right, I'm about 5 yards from that target. First up, we have our Aguila 95 grain full metal jacket. Let's see what this gives us. 903, 892, 911, 884, 899. So pretty consistent velocity. Now our 38 short Colt, what I was averaging in our 2-inch barrel was 631 feet per second. I don't know if we'll get an increase in our 4-inch barrel, but let's see what we get here. See how close we get to the 730 rated velocity. 696, 726, 684, 650, 695. So not particularly consistent. We have some that go up, some that go down, but definitely higher than our 631 feet per second average that we got in the 2-inch barrel. So that might make a difference on its ballistic performance. So let's hit our ballistics gel block, see how these compare. All right, we're going to go into plain clear ballistics. That's our best potential. I call it that because with hollow points it gives the bullet the best potential to expand, but also if we have low powered cartridges and we hit that rib simulation, that can sometimes lower that penetration. So this is still our best potential here for a good performance. So 380 ACP plain gel. All right, let's hit that with our 38 short Colt in the 4-inch barrel. Go take a look. All right, so we had a lot of penetration with our 380 ACP. A lot of people say that's a weak cartridge, but yeah, that's some good penetration when you got a full metal jacket. And a lot of people would rather have that good penetration than like hollow point expansion, so they go with the full metal jacket. You know, we see some damage that would indicate tumbling, but it did straighten out. And we went all the way up to about 25 3/4 inches penetration. Now, our 38 short Colt is actually totally ideal. We did not get over penetration. We got a penetration of about 15 3/4 inches penetration, which is perfect. Now, obviously, neither of these expanded, so we're not going to get 1.5 times expansion. But as far as meeting our minimum and not over penetrating, our 38 short Colt did a little better here. So let's put on our denim, put on our MDF, see how they compare that way. All right, more of our real world simulation, 380 ACP. Let's see what this does. All right, looks like we lost that bullet. So let me do it one more time, see if we can catch this. All right, now let's hit that with our 38 short Colt. Let's go take a look. All right, our first shot went out of the block to the right there. Looks like there was some tumbling going on, and it was a good inch inside that block that way, so it's definitely arcing out. And when we look at our MDF here, we can't really tell a whole lot from this. It looks like potentially, you know, as the 38 short Colt hit that, it could have started to deform maybe a little bit. Our 380 ACP just went right through. But our first shot with our second shot with our 380 ACP to the MDF, it lowered that penetration down to 24 inches rather than, you know, about the 26 we had before. With our 38 short Colt, it did the same thing. Good amount of damage right here. It just lowered that penetration, but we're still at our minimum here. We're at about 12.5 inches of penetration. So obviously neither of these expanded, so we're not going to get 1.5 times expansion of the standard that we want to see. But when we look at our penetration standards, our 38 short Colt was perfectly ideal and perfect, as where our 380 ACP penetrated a little bit too much. But, you know, I'm not sure that the 380 ACP penetrated too much. I don't think it would really cause any issues as far as passing through an attacker or anything like that, potentially, but I don't see that happening. But what we can say is that our 38 short Colt definitely dumped more of its energy in the short area, which is actually pretty good. So let's take a close-up look at these. Then I'm going to shoot my steel, see what kind of practical shootability I can get with these. All right, here's a close-up look at these bullets. Here's a 380 ACP 95 grain, truly a full metal jacket. You can always tell that by looking at the exposed base and seeing that very thick jacket around it. Our 38 short Colt, a little bit of bullet deformation on the nose from one side to the other, but not a huge difference there with what's going on. Really nothing going on. Our through our MDF, our 380 ACP looks the same as it did through plain gel, but our 38 short Colt a little bit different because it's pure lead, and you can see some imprinting of that denim on there, and also the little bit of different deformation on that bullet, flattened nose just a little bit. So looking at it compared to the plain gel, there's a little bit of a difference there, and its overall shape and size and all of that is where our full metal jacket stuff doesn't really change at all. So let's a close-up look at those. All right, 12 yards from the target. I'm gonna get a sight picture, pop off some rounds, see how the controllability feels for me. So 380 ACP, see what this does for me. All right, feels pretty good. Couldn't keep them completely centered, but it felt pretty good for the way they shot. 38 short Colt through a nice heavy revolver. See how this does. All right, I missed some. I was just kind of letting it go. I'm not really sure why I missed, other than I think maybe I'm just trying to control the recoil a little bit more than what I should, so it causes me to overcompensate, I suppose. Interesting. Now, let me back it up. I think this would be kind of fun to back up a little ways and shoot from some distance just to kind of see, you know, the accuracy we can get with these little short Colts. All right, 75 yards from the target. I know it's kind of far. The reason why I started doing this, really, it was looking back at when I first started shooting handguns. You know, internet gun forums were a big thing even before YouTube existed. And, you know, a lot of people would say stuff like, well, you're not supposed to shoot a handgun beyond 3 yards. And if you take weaker cartridges and you shoot them at distance, well, they wouldn't even hit the target, buddy. And I just kind of remember all this stupid stuff people would say. And it made me think, really? And then I would just test this stuff. And that's really still what I'm doing to this day, is having fun with stuff like that. So 38 short Colt from 75 yards, that's kind of silly. 380 ACP as well. So first shot, I have a 95 grain Aguila, and then the rest in this magazine are actually 90 grain PMCs. That's what I happen to have on hand. So let's see what I can do with this 380 ACP pistol at 75 yards. Really far off. Very, very far off. These shots are actually hitting 15 to 20 feet high at that distance. That's something I've noticed with full metal jacket versus hollow point, with the weight distribution of a hollow point, with most of the weight in the rear. When you shoot from distance like this with 380 ACP, they'll pretty much hit right where you're aiming. You go over to full metal jacket and you never know what you're gonna get. And that's what I'm seeing right now with these. Wow. I don't even understand that. Yeah, so they're all hitting above the target, anywhere from 3 to 6 to 15 to 20 feet high, and right and left with no consistency there. Interesting. Now with our 38 short Colt, you know, this is a lead bullet. The original bullet, I believe, was a full 38 caliber, so that was really squeezing through the bore, and it was on a heeled bullet like a 22. Modern ones are loaded like 38 special, where they're, you know, they're 358 diameter, but that's a little bit wider bullet than the bore of 357 because they're pure lead. That might give me some better accuracy. So not sure what to expect with these. So let me see what I can do here. 75 yards. So even that right there really surprises me how accurate those can be. Very short cases. Now we're gonna laugh here for a minute. What's interesting, I tried this one time before, and the cases aren't even in the chambers. That's where they're at, where the center pin is trying to actuate that loader. So not really practical. You have to be really careful you drop them, but it can be done. So I'll keep going with this. So I'm very surprised at how accurate something like that can be. But it's simple physics, it's simple little things going on. And where I aimed was basically center mass. That's another thing people will often say. Where you aim, and you have to aim 10 feet above the target, because I looked up on ballistic charts, and you know, that thing drops 10 feet at that distance. And no, I just aimed completely center mass right about here on that silhouette. And the reason for that is because these are moving at only 700 feet per second. So if something's so slow, even if you get a little bit of recoil on these, you're going to get some. You know, by that time that recoil happens like that, it's happening before that bullet leaves that muzzle. So essentially what's going on is, even though I'm keeping my sights center, the actual moment that bullet leaves that bore, it's probably, the sight is lined up probably about 3 feet above the target. But to me, it makes no difference because I'm just lining it up center. And it's just kind of coincidence that it comes back down, dropping, and it hits right where I was aiming. But I've noticed that with a lot of slow cartridges, they'll do that. So looking at this test, it really is surprising. You know, when I fired them really quickly at close range, that was all on me. I'm used to like kind of bracing for a little bit of recoil and pushing my muzzle back down. And I obviously was doing that, so it completely threw me off. If I would have just relaxed my wrist and just kept pulling through, I probably would have hit them all. But with something like this, again, this was easy to do something like that at close range. A lot of people still ask me to this day, or they won't ask me, but they'll make comments like, man, I would never get a 380 ACP pistol like that because I could just go with a 9mm. And my thinking on something like that is that, well, you could go with a 9mm pistol and you could have more power or whatnot. What I've noticed in training is that a 9mm or a 380 ACP, they'll shoot the same. If you have some training, you go and you shoot and you get that muzzle back down on target and you do everything that you know how to do well, they'll both shoot the same. But if you take a 9mm and a 380 and you kind of put yourself mentally into like, I don't have any training, I'm just going to goof off and just yank that trigger at the target, what you'll notice was 9mm you'll miss. You'll still hit with something like this. So my thinking on something like this is that in the heat of the moment with adrenaline pumping, all that going on, I'm probably not going to be at the skill level I am when I'm on the range. So having something like this, you know, with good training, that puts me to a place that I'm more likely to hit the target multiple times with something like this. So I find that to be a very good advantage for something like that. So I don't discount the 380 ACP pistol, especially when it's a bigger format like this. It's a very good option. Now we're looking for low recoil. Both these had low recoil. Obviously our revolver had a little bit less felt recoil, but you know, the trigger pull is kind of hard on a revolver to do. But as far as sheer recoil goes, yeah, our 38 short Colt's going to have less. And for our ballistic performance, it performed ideally. So really it's a win-win situation. If you're looking for something low recoil, I think it's still going to work really well. I think this 38 short Colt will work. And you got to remember, when we're taking stuff like 22 long rifle, 22 Magnum, stuff like that, we're trying to get this good ballistic performance where we get expansion, but if we get expansion, it's not going to penetrate enough, blah, 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 blah. We can hope to get expansion of 35 diameter and maybe still get that penetration. With this, we still got that diameter to start with, and we got good penetration. So it's beating a 22 mag, a 22 long rifle for ballistic performance, yet it has about the same felt recoil. So that's something to think about. So that's what you get today with this test. Very interesting to see how they compare. So that's what you get today. So as always, comment, share, and like, and thanks for watching.